continuing. What we're doing now is we have the timing tensioner stud and the idler pulley bolt, or vice versa. Either way, PRP sells them. They're ARP bolts. The old ones are fine. You can do OEM if you want. These are just ARP, so ARP everything. Might as well. There is stipulation, which I haven't figured it out yet. This is the stud. Try not to lose the washer. And someone was saying that you have to trim down the part, which is the long part, that goes into the block. I just started pulling out the stud now, so I'm going to confirm that or not confirm that here in a second. So bear with me. And we're going to go from there. And all this is really is just getting the stud out. So that way it's a new bolt. You could use OEM too, and that'll be a new bolt that's not 30 years old, that's prone to cracking. It's not prone to cracking, but it's 30 years old, 30-year-old hardware. Replace it. It's like 10 bucks. But as you can see, I'm backing this one out. This one's already a new bolt. And I am going to get some red Loctite and put on these, because timing components you don't want to move, and I would rather this be a headache to get out than it back out and blow a whole motor that I just dropped a lot of money on. Not a new motor, but everything else is not a labor, so you get the point. So let's get this out. So here is the old one, and it went in like so, as you can see, the red. So now that bolt looks really long though, so let's compare these to the new ones. Oh yeah, it's different. Both ends are very, very different. And look how much longer it is. So we're gonna have to trim one of these ends down. Now to figure out which end. Another important thing to note is these are two different thread pitches. So if you're going to, obviously you have to cut this off. You have to do it on this long end, because this is a different thread pitch from this end. So make sure you check that and double verify that, or else you would have just junked a bolt. That is seated all the way in. New ARP bolt comes with the Allen head. Well, it doesn't come with the Allen head, but you can drive it in with the Allen head, and you can see how much longer it is. So I'm just going to match the thread length. Well, technically, yeah, that's right. I'm just going to match the thread length and go off of that, because this base here needs to be seated against there, seated against the block. So I'm going to back this back out, measure this, put a piece of tape around the threads, and then cut it. I can make it through this without sneezing. Love allergies. Did you know that allergies are because of engineers? So let's go back to that subject. But yeah, so essentially, if you have allergies, it's because there are too many female trees, because civil engineers, too many male trees, because civil engineers thought that if they planted too many female trees, that they would produce like an offspring essentially, and it would create like a rotting smell. So what they did is they planted male trees, and obviously they give off pollen, and there's not enough female trees to receive the pollen, therefore leaving extra pollen in the air, giving you allergies. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Back to the car stuff. we have the head stud, not the head studs, but the studs for the timing gear and the idler pulley and tensioner. And what I did, let me show you, is this is obviously the studs, and I marked out the measurement of it, and now they're the same length. I am cutting the part that goes into the block, and the reason I put the nuts here is obviously whenever you cut this, you can use a hacksaw, you can use a grinder. I'm probably going to use a grinder just because I have a M18 grinder, and when you take the nuts off, it's going to clean up the threads and give you a good mating surface. So let's cut them off, and as you can see, I can't hold it perfectly, but same length. Obviously, it's still very hot, but M18 grinder, back the nuts off, and clean the thread. It'll clean the thread up. So let's take this off. And as you can see, that's cut off. Same length, if not a little shorter, but that's fine. Maybe like a 30-second shorter. That's nice and not tight, but there we go. And as you can see, that's bottoms out down in there. So we're going on a trip in a favorite rocket ship. And I might need 2 hands to get this started. Boop, there it goes. Easy peasy. I just gotta get some red Loctite in there. I'm gonna seat that in there. Make sure it goes in. And timing studs are upgraded. And we're in. Just wait. We just got back from Nissan. Got a new crank gear, just because it's 30 years old. It was $13, I think. 2 new Woodruff keys. We just blew out and cleaned the stud locations in block, so that way there's no fluid underneath of it, so it doesn't get hydrolocked. It is set to TDC now, but we're going to rotate that back so the valves don't collide when we set the cams to TDC. Now we have put the ARP Headstuds in, lubed the threads on that with ARP lubricant, and head gasket, head goes on. We have the restrictor pill in. We went from an OEM one, which I think is like a 1.5 or 1.3, to a 1.0, and I'll show you that. So that is the new one. That is the OEM one. You can't get these out unless you drill and tap it, and that goes into your oil feed into your block. So if you don't want to do that, what you do is you just tap that down in there until it's flush. I need to go a little bit more because it's sticking out about 1 mil. You tap the old one down, and as long as this one is smaller than the old one, or the orifice is smaller, you're good to put that in more, which we are. So head studs and head gasket is next. Headstuds is hand tight in there, so we use the AT handle, and then it's 100 foot-pounds for the nuts. So we're going to do it in increments of 4. So we're going to do 25, 50, 75, and then 100, and that's what we're going to do now. You gotta get lower. You can't see. On being domestically violated. You also have to torque it and then loosen it and then retorque it to the spec too, so keep that in mind. So next step is cams, and we're going with Kelford 182As, which is 264 lift and 264 duration, and I want to say 9.2 lift. So should get a little chop, and then that's going to also help with a 62 series turbo, essentially, from their recommendation, and confirm that through their tech support. And now we have the cam caps clean, we have the cam journals clean, we have the seals out, half moons out, and we have to install them. So we need to pre-lube the journals, pre-lube the cam on top of the cam once we get it inside the journals, and then torque it down from middle outwards in small increments. I'm going to do like half a turn to get it seated, then 1 turn, and yeah, so let's get going. We're starting to add some power mods, and I'm excited. So buckets are clean, we have to pre-lube those, journals are clean, cams are off. Make sure that when you do this, you have a little template pointing which way these are going. So if you look, this one's clean. No, not really, but you can see it says I6 for intake 6. So I6, and that's pointing down this way, indicating which way the letter's going. Just make sure you have yourself a template. So that way you can put these back in because these are directional. And then on the front seal area, you need to put RTV on this section and in this gallery right here because the oil feed, it's kind of hard to see, but the oil feed right there will actually leak out through here because there's no sealant. So red R2V, black R2V, whatever you want to use. Alright, we have got the camshafts in. They are Kelford 182 L182As, which is 264 duration and 9.2 lift, or 9.5 lift. I think it's 9.2. And it's pretty much the maximum you can do without getting the machine in the head, which is machining out these areas right here. So now we have walked these in by hand. It's really important when you do it to check which lobes are pressing down on the buckets, which if you saw in the fast forward video right before this, you could see me pointing at 2 lobes. Those are the 2 lobes that were pointing. So this one is pointing straight down, this one's pointing down, and that's it. And how you know it's by TDC per the FSM manual is these are pointing out this way, and you can also use this as a timing indication mark too, and it should be pointing this way. It's important to put RTV on from about right here all the way out because it's going to mate against the surface and you can't really get a perfect seal on that. We already got a new seal in here and it's going to be easy because we can just put the cam cap on top of it, be done. So put some assembly lube on this. These are torqued down to 5 foot-pounds right now. I'm going to torque this. My storage cut me off. Sorry about that. Like I said, put some RTV on here. These are already pre-torqued to 5 foot-pounds. And then I'm going to put this on, torque it 5 foot-pounds, and then starting from the middle, working your way out. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to torque it to 8 foot-pounds. Just like that. It's a little excessive, but just like that. Curve that one could be really disastrous if you didn't catch it or if you don't know what you're doing. 2, scary as hell because 1, they're 30-year-old bolts. 8 foot-pounds is not a lot, but this is a 2-foot torque wrench or torque bar, whatever you want to call it, and that thing just kept spinning. But what was happening was this. So on cylinder 5 right now, this is the one the lobes are pointed straight vertically down like this. Not only that, but before this, I spent about 3 or 4 hours cleaning each one of these bolts, cleaning the holes in the cam studs because they were pretty seized, pretty corroded, and this is a perfect, I think, indication of that. This was reading torqued, and this was reading torqued, and then, but it just kept spinning. Like there was no, if I gave it a little jerk on the torque wrench, it would hit spec. That's not how those work. What was happening is this wasn't getting pressed down evenly, so it was like this and not like this. I did unscrew this and then try putting this down to even the load, and that still didn't work, so I just loosened this a couple times, tightened it back down, loosened it, tightened it back down, and it finally set. But there was almost an 1/8 inch of a gap below this washer, and if I would have let that go, this would have snapped, this would have snapped, and essentially on the first pull, this cam would have went like that, motor would have went like that. That would have been bad. That would have been very bad. Make sure they're seated all the way. Check, double check all the torques, everything. Thankfully, it is like 6 to 8 foot-pounds, so we went to 8. If I would have went to 6, I would have never caught that. I don't think I would have caught that because it would have hit spec right away. Always check. Always check. Very important. Let's do the next one. This is stressful, but we're doing it. Okay, So we got the cams in. Cam gears are on. I'm gonna kind of hide that from y'all because they look so good. I put red Loctite on these just because they're only torqued to 10 to 14 foot-pounds, and they're fine thread. So I put red Loctite just a little bit, and torque them to 14 foot-pounds. When I technical patterns, I see evenly. Same process. Go to 1 and then hold the cam. Cams are on. So, excuse the mess, but obviously we're rebuilding stuff. So, the FSM manual, once you get all the timing marks indicated and lined up, obviously I have a extension in number 1 cylinder to set TDC, to verify it essentially, but the Woodruff key needs to be straight up. Put a 5mm Allen in this, and then either prop it against here with tension, the ratchet, or you can use as the regular one, prop it against something to relieve tension. Set this, and then pull that out, and the tensioner spring will have tension on it. I just put a little bit of red Loctite on this nut. The torque is 44 foot-pounds, but the FSM manual says to rotate this twice to set the tension, and then hold this with a 5mm Allen key, and then torque it down. So we're going to rotate it twice right now, and then torque it down. And this is also an indication if you set your cams right. Granted, there's going to be some resistance, but if there's any hard clunks or any stoppage essentially at all, you need to recheck everything. That feels nice and smooth. And we're at TDC again. You can double verify that by this dot being lined up with this nick and the N1 pump, and also your Woodruff keys being set up. I think it's like 1 in a million. It's some crazy scenario that these marks will never line up again unless you take the belt off and put it back on. So that was 2 times the rotation. Now this should be set to the ideal tension, and we have we did do the ARP modification, so I'm going to go to the other side, 44 foot-pounds. And we're going to hold this like so, and that should prevent it. Oh, see how it just moved? So I'm going to do that again 2 more times. Because that moved, and I did not want that to move. I have a feeling this is going to be tricky. I'm getting an extension. .44 foot-pounds. Should be good. As you just saw, there's a 5mm hole right there. It was a little tricky. It was a little tricky to get in there, but we took a 5mm Allen, like a standard Allen wrench, not a socket or anything like we tried originally, and just held it in there and then torqued it to 44 foot-pounds, and we're good now. Next is put all the timing covers back on, and yeah, we need to do the exhaust studs, which are titanium that we have from PRP, and then we need to put the intake manifold back on. I need to clean that up and get that. I'm not going to powder coat it, but I'm just going to trim black it and hook all the under plenum lines up to that. Run AN lines to the oil filter relocation kit and get that ready. I just ordered the clutch just like 30 minutes ago, so that'll be here probably in a couple weeks. I'm hoping a lot sooner. But we're going to do everything we can to get this motor in the car, and then including dropping the trans so the motor can be in the car, and then all we have to do is put the clutch on. And that gives me time to fab up all the turbo stuff, so we're going. Hey, go. Easy go. Best helper. Go. Go. Yeah.